Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about some of the combine takeaways, some guys that really showed out, some guys that had some tough days. But now let's get into some rule changes, why don't we? There are so many things happening around college football, but one of the more interesting things that have happened over the past couple of days is helmet communication. We talked about it a little bit last week and some possible effects of this, but it looks like they're fast tracking this, and it doesn't necessarily look like it will take effect until April 18th when the Rules Committee for the NCAA actually meets for the next time. But at the end of the day, it looks like all of this stuff is going to get fast tracked into the 2024 season, so it'll be interesting to see the effects. But all the changes. First, helmet communication. We talked about that. Some new details came out about that. And then tablets on the sideline. Another thing we touched on a little bit. Two NFL staples that have found their way down to college football. And then the 2 minute warning. Another one that is a little bit more contentious, I think, around the college football community than the others. But still, three very interesting rule changes that will change the whole dynamic of different games. So let's jump right in. First, some new information about the helmet comms is they will cut off with 15 seconds to go on the play clock, which is very interesting for so many reasons. I think it will increase teams running hurry up, no huddle type offenses because, first of all, when you can talk straight to your quarterback and the quarterback can relay that to everyone else, it makes things a lot faster. But also, you want to be able to communicate for as long up until the snap of the football as possible. So I think we will see a good amount more teams, at least the ones that are comfortable doing it, run a little bit faster of a pace because of this. And then one player on each team will be able to wear it at any given time. So one player on each side of the ball. And I think obviously it's going to be quarterback for every offense, but the interesting part is defense, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But I think this is one of the more interesting changes to college football in a while because a lot of the other changes have had very little to do with football, at least the actual game to game football. There has been a lot of changes that have involved conference realignment, so playing totally different teams. Doesn't have anything to do with the actual football game. Playoff reconstruction obviously has something to do with the structure of the season, but doesn't change the game. So very, very interesting that this is the first in these recent changes that has a direct impact on the day-to-day, or the game-to-game, play-to-play impact of the game. So there's so many different things to think about here, especially with, Michigan kind of pushing this along with some of their sign stealing. That obviously is something that we have found out is not exclusive to Michigan, but they were the ones that kind of started this whole thing and pushed this forward, which kind of a bittersweet thing. Obviously, this is the change that I really like and I think is going to be good for the sport, but it came at the expense of a lot of other things. So not necessarily the way you wanted to get here, but we're here now, and it's a very interesting addition because a lot of offensive play callers have loved this idea for a very, very long time. But it does give some interesting decision making to come down because there are some QB battles, mainly Oregon. I'm not sure how much of a battle it actually is. I think Dylan Gabriel will end up winning out. But at the end of the day, with this new introduction, someone like Dante Moore, who we know is physically talented, we know has incredible arm talent and can do a ton of really, really good things on the football field, but at the end of the day was not the most consistent with picking up coverages, with communicating all the time, doing all the things that are very important for young quarterbacks and very important for quarterbacks in general. And I think this takes the pressure off him a little bit to identify all of the coverages that he's going up against and find a way to communicate with everyone in real time. So having, whether it's, Will Stein, I assume, will be the guy with the other end of this walkie-talkie situation they got going. But I think there's going to be some form of a push for younger quarterbacks to be able to get on the field faster. We talked about this a little bit last week, but there is that intense push at all times for the most talented guys to get on the field at all times. So especially in this quarterback battle where you might have a younger guy that's probably physically more talented but just doesn't fully understand the game or the playbook quite as well as an older guy, and you have the ability now to go with the younger guy and be in his ear and help him out through all these different things. So there's a lot that will come into play here. I think one of the big things that this will put more earnest on the quarterback for is communication, right? When in past, when you look over to the sideline, it's everyone looking over and getting different signs and stuff of that nature. But at the end of the day, if, let's say, signs are no longer a part of the sideline, which I think it's very possible that they will be. I think there will be signs for wide receivers or running backs or tight ends or whatever, what have you. But I do think this increases the earnest on the quarterback to be a really good communicator, to have his guys fully prepared for each play, and a lot of that is going to fall on him because it's going to go into his ear and then straight out to the team. So the communication for these quarterbacks just became a little bit more important, that's for sure. But let's get into the defensive side of the ball for this, because a lot of very interesting implications here. Obviously, you have one guy on the defensive side of the ball that will be able to wear it at any given time, and the vast majority of these will be veteran linebackers, the Jahad Campbells of the world, Smile Munden, guys that fully understand the playbook, fully understand how to communicate with their teams, and also command respect on the field, which is a super important thing. But there are some teams out there that will probably be relying on some younger kids to do it. Anthony Hill is the first to come to mind, a sophomore linebacker at Texas, that I tend to believe will be the guy that will have the mic in his ear and will be the communicator on defense. And while he is a plenty talented guy, he is going into his second year in college. So there is that worry that maybe he's not all the way there in terms of communication. So the defensive side of the ball is very interesting because there's so many guys that can do the job, but at the end of the day, you want your linebacker probably being the guy just because that's the center of the defense, can communicate with everyone very efficiently. But there are tons of really experienced guys, so that it'll be interesting to see how they kind of allocate those, and does a nickelback like a Malachi Moore maybe get the duties instead of a Jahad Campbell, or there's tons of guys. Malachi Starks is another guy on Georgia that could get it instead of Smile Munden. So tons of really interesting decisions to be made in terms of who gets the headset, and does the headset bounce around on the defensive side of the ball a little bit. So tons of unknowns in this situation, tons of things that will remain to be seen. And I think one of the really interesting parts of all of this is, with the Rules Committee not meeting until April 18th, there's not really a chance to implement most of these changes until after spring ball, which is something that I'm sure teams are not too happy about if they are going to end up showing up in the 2024 season. You want to be able to go through your spring game, go through all of the spring practices and scrimmages and all of things of that nature with those headsets, because it makes everyone more comfortable. It makes everyone understand the flow of every play call and everything like that. So it's a very interesting thing that I think maybe not a lot of people are necessarily thinking about, but I think there's going to be some people that are playing a little bit of catch-up in the summer and trying to figure out what this situation is and how to handle it all, because it is going to be a new thing. Having a guy in your ear among all the other sounds around you and the crowd and everything, it's going to be a thing that quarterbacks especially, are going to have to handle with grace, and it'll be interesting to see if they're able to do that and which quarterbacks are able to do that, because I tend to think some more veteran guys would be more equipped to handle that, but who knows? Maybe I'm totally wrong on that. I think a lot of people that I, massively respect in this industry have said I think it totally leans in the younger quarterback's direction, which makes sense to me. But I do think there is the layer of, this is a new change. This is something that quarterbacks are going to have to wrap their head around. And when you're trying to do that along with learning the playbook, it can be a little bit tougher. So I think some older quarterbacks might handle this a little bit better in the short term, but in the long term, it does lend itself to younger players being able to play faster and then also, be ready faster in games. So I think there's a lot of different theories about how all this is going to come about, how all this is going to work out, but I think for the most part, it's a great change. I think the tablets on the sideline is another no-brainer. It makes total sense, and it'll increase the level of football, which is the most important thing. It's huge assist to younger guys as well, because being able to go on the sideline and see exactly what you did wrong in real time only helps their learning process and only increases their learning process. So very interested to see how that has an effect. And we'll also see some guys on the coaching staff that might be a little bit of unsung heroes, using the tablet to help out their guys. I know for a long time there was Buster Faulkner down at Georgia was a huge help to Stetson Bennett, but a lot of people didn't really know his name until he got the job at Georgia Tech as the OC, and now he has burst onto the scene. So tons of guys that we will be able to see that we might not have been able to see prior because of all these new changes, which I'm super excited about. Always love to see some new faces in the coaching world. So I think it's going to be great. I think all these changes are good. I think the one that people are a little contentious about is the 2-minute warning. I don't necessarily love it myself, I'll be honest, but at the end of the day, commercial breaks are a big part of this game, at least for the people that end up making the decisions. So I think this was always going to happen. It was kind of an inevitability, but not the biggest fan, but I can live with it. It's not the biggest deal either. So a lot of really interesting changes. I'm sure there are some unintended consequences that will be coming with these, but at the end of the day, I'm very interested to see what all of this leads to, how people utilize the in-helmet communications and which teams benefit the most, because at the end of the day, the teams that can utilize this the best might be the team that ends up lifting the trophy at the end of the year. So a lot of very interesting things to keep track of here, but new rule changes look like they're coming to college football, and they are not alone in the changes that are coming to college football. So I will keep you up to date with all of the happenings there. But we're going to take another break here, and when we come back, we're going to talk playoff discussions, getting a little contentious between the ACC and Big 12 and the SEC and Big 10. Some fighting for power, but we'll see where all of that leads. But stick with us, and we will be right back.